And we are back with more Duel Masters OCG decks. In the last video, we covered a lot of decks from the TCG era, spanning years 2002 to 2004. This video, we are starting with 2005, and well, depending on how long it takes us, well, let's just wait and see. So, at this point in the timeline, we are still firmly entrenched in the Bazar era. This is a Bazar blue deck. We actually saw a very similar one in the previous video, so let's not waste any more time. Now here's a different take on Bazar. This is Bazar Black, or Removal Bazar. Now it uses some darkness cards, it uses Bolmedius, so it's got a bit more of a control gear. We aren't going too crazy with attacking like Gonta. Instead, there's a lot of things we can exploit. Bazar and Bolmedius do have a level of synergy. I remember when I was in school, I used a deck with one copy of Bazar and Bolmedius. I borrowed it from a friend. What I did was I summoned, I think I had Bolmedius out. I summoned Bazar, attacked with Bolmedius, ended the turn, extra turn, Bolmedius, swing, and then, you know, break, and then Tadomida, or something like that. So, yeah, pretty good synergy there. Anyway, I think we're going to see a lot of these sorts of decks as well. Bazar Forcive No Light. Speaking of which, this was the way the deck evolved to really compensate for Bazar being Hall of Famed. So because you couldn't play several copies of Bazar anymore, I guess the aggro version wasn't too reliable, and so instead we had to use Bolmedius as another primary finisher. The addition of Jagalzor here is pretty cool because in my mind he is like a super watered down version of Bazar, because, you know, by giving all of your guys a speed attacker on that turn, I mean, I guess it's not completely dissimilar to getting a second turn. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And you also notice that Gallic is in this deck. Gallic is very good in the OCG. I assume it's because the main competition for this deck would have been like Aquan decks, which are high on blockers, and even Deck Out, which used the likes of Belix and, you know, from Tajamal from time to time, who could give Bazar some problems. Right. Moving away from the TCG, we have Mono Red, which seemed to have won the Japanese Championship of 2005. A lot of these cards I am familiar with, but some of them not so much. I think this card is Xyler's Lighter, the one next to Rikabu in the bottom row, not entirely sure. And then I know this one next to Kukpalan is like a 2-mana 4,000 guy. I'm not quite sure what the drawback effect is. But yeah, nice to see Mono Fire in action. Right, now another thing that we can notice from these deck lists is that we are at around the set 14 timeline, the set they introduced the first Cross Gears, I believe it was. But one of the most profoundly impactful cards of the set was Hellscrapper. 7 mana, Apocalypse Vice for up to 5,500, but it's shield trigger, so super versatile and goes into pretty much everything. Now, I think there is an argument to be made that it kind of is the glue that, or okay, maybe not the glue, but it does a really significant job in holding Wave Strikers together. In the TCG, using stuff like Tornado Flame or Burst Shot, I feel like it doesn't work quite as well. The element of roll compression is super strong. Now, curiously, there is no Shaman Totem in this list. Shaman Totem is a 6-mana creature, also released in set 14, that allows you to draw a card for each different race you have in the battle zone, other race you have in the battle zone when you play them. I think that card was a very good fit for Wave Strikers, since Wave Strikers famously are lacking in draw power. And I know there's Mysterious, but, you know, it's not instant gratification. But yeah, suspiciously missing from this list. The Windexes are also kind of weird. You don't normally see them in Wave Strikers. Now here's another list, Counter Balbalzac. So this card uses cards like Apocalypse Day and Miraculous Truce to stop Bazar from attacking. Miraculous Truce in particular is very interesting because when your opponent breaks into it, okay. It's basically the worst of the miraculous spells, but it did have this niche application of being able to fight Bazar. What it does is when you activate it, you call a civilization, and creatures of that civ of your opponents cannot attack for a turn or 2 turns or until the start of their next turn, something like that. But I think it's really good because, you know, you can reasonably call fire or nature to, well, not only stop the Bazar, but as you can see here, a bunch of other opposing creatures. So yeah, I feel like this card, Miraculous Truce, would have come in handy in many Bazar mirrors. Yep. Now another one, we've got white, or I guess for us TCG folk, yellow Bazar. So I guess no water, and we got a little bit of draw power with Mysterious. I assume it's meant to go a bit slower. It uses more DM14 cards, not just Hellscrapper and Dreaming Moon Knife, who we see here, but we've also got Broken Horn the Barricading, cost 4 mana, the dude next to Rumbling Terrorhorn. It makes your opponents, I believe, water and darkness spells cost more to cast. And then we've got this dude called Cobalt the Patroller, who we see in the top left-hand corner next to Petrova. It's basically Rain of Arrows on steroids. And please forgive me, I realize I am saying basically quite a lot this video. When you play Cobalt from your hand, well, I don't know if it's from your hand, but when you play them, your opponent shows you their hand and discards all darkness and fire spells. So pretty good. I would say that's considerably better than Rain of Arrows. Shifting away from Bazar, we've got another removal control style deck. This is a good stuffs pile. At this point in the timeline, Skeleton Vice, the OCG version of Cranium Clamp, is now limited to 1. So for the super strong discard, we've got to play more copies of Cloned Nightmare. Also, to compensate for Slash Charger being Hall of Fame to 1, they are playing 1 copy of Hell Slash, which I think may also be on Hall of Fame, and 1 copy of Future Slash. So, yeah, just usual deck out stuff, and we've got some new players in here too. Monkey Landis. So I think this is Landis or Randis. I'm not too sure how to pronounce it. Please forgive me. I believe it is the slang OCG term for mana burn. And I think monkey refers to one of the armoroids, a simian warrior or punch trooper, something like that. I don't know, but anyway, from the looks of it, this is an armoroid mana burn deck. Very much built with the tribal theme in mind. We are able to build some card advantage thanks to Mysterious and more notably Dark Hydra, which the TCG doesn't have access to. Looks like this is a bit of an older list because it's playing 4 Slash Chargers, which I guess in retrospect, that's also really good, right? Because it's a mana ramp for the deck. Jumping to the next year, 2006, looks like cross gears are finally seeing play. One thing that we've learned was that partially from DMP, even though that's a bit of a different story, cross gears were not super duper good. However, one cross gear that did see a lot of success was called Bajula's Soul, and I think that was released in set 15 or 16. And what that did was when you equipped it to one of your creatures, or rather when you crossed it, it would give it a Bajula style effect. So when that creature attacks, you burn your opponent's mana, and that's very strong. Now, as we can also see here, we are playing 1 copy of Terra Dragon Zalberg, who is literally Fortress Shell, but Earth Dragon, who we see in the bottom right-hand corner. So, fire, nature, water, mana burn, aggro-ish, mid-rangey, makes sense to me. And then you got Fighter Dual Fang, so you can, ramp mana and make stuff happen. Removal Sapphire. So, Bolia Sapphire Dragon came out actually not that late in the timeline. Pretty early, I would have to say. Now, this deck was built around winning with Bolia Sapphire Dragon. Fans of DMP and the OCG will no doubt be extremely familiar with him. At a hefty cost of 10 mana, you get a triple breaker speed attacker Bolia effect. Now the way this deck would operate is you would play it as a sweaty control deck, kind of, but you would also do your best to try to dump Bolia Sapphire into your graveyard, and I assume we used the emergency typhoons and the 1 copy of Slash Charger to try and make that happen. Then, at 5 mana, we would play Inferno Gate. Yes, Inferno Gate costed 5 mana in the OCG, unlike the 7 it costs in DMP. And that's literally a monster reborn, so you get to play Balsaph for 5 instead of 10. And then, well, you can imagine how devastating it is for the opponent to have Balsaph out as early as turn 5, maybe 6. So, yeah, pretty wild. And Bolia Sapphire was Hall of Famed. Well, I don't know shortly after this, but it was Hall of Famed at some point, I would assume, due to this interaction. All right, so here is another Balsaph list, Forcive No Nature. This one is playing, well, I gotta give a shout out to the Grave of Angels and Demons, which we see below Belix and above Hellscrapper. Yeah, this is a card that came out in DM13. We considered experimenting with it, but ended up not featuring it in any of the lists. Yeah, just another take on Inferno Gate Balsaph. Now here's I don't know if it's a more interesting take on the deck, but I think it's pretty funny. So this deck uses 4 copies of Dandy Nasuo. Based on this, they have evaluated, you know, we can make Balsaph even more consistent. So what Dandy Nasuo does, who we affectionately referred to as the eggplant in DMP, when you summon him, put 1 card from your deck into your mana zone, and then you have to destroy one of the cards in your mana zone. So this was a very convenient way of getting Balsaph into the discard, because you could search your deck for him, right? And, you know, you're not just limited to searching your deck for Balsaph with 1 card, like with Slash Charger. Now you've got 5 outs for it. And then, you know, other than that, there's some just general good stuff, and it operates in very much the same way. You dump the Balsaph early, and then you Inferno Gate it and swing as soon as you can. Another take on Balsaph is Fang. So, well, I'm seeing Bejeweled Soul here, and it looks to me like this is a more sweaty take on Bolia Sapphire. Instead of trying to turbo him out by getting him in your discard and playing Inferno Gate, instead, what you do is you go for a more generic strategy. You progress through the mana curve, and then you hit your devastating mana burn cards through some combination of Zalberg, Soul Swap, and Bejeweled Soul, and at a more secure point in the game, you can get out Balsaph and start swinging. For the next deck, we've got a very famous deck called, well, it's not really called Choose the Beat. I think that's just the Google Translate not working properly. But it very much centers around this mouse dude, Chusha. I think he's called Disturbing Chusha. I really should have done my homework before I made this video. But anyway, this is the dude next to Aqua Surfer. What he does is he has to attack each turn if able, but while he is tapped, your opponent cannot cast spells. As you can imagine, that's very inconvenient for control-style strategies. So this deck just plays a lot of disruptive and good stuff's creatures and attacks the opponent to death. Got Coral, Aqua Surfer, and Petrova for the slightly later stages in the game, and T-Dad, I guess, can be useful to give your opponent a nasty surprise. I really like the color composition of this deck, and I really like the idea of this deck in the TCG. Forcive, no darkness, you just play a crap ton of good stuff's creatures for cheap and aggro your opponent to death. Chusha is admittedly extremely good, so I don't think the concept quite works without him, but hey, dreams are free. Here's another control deck, removal control. Unfortunately, there are a lot of cards here I do not recognize, but I think the deck out shell is quite clear. From the looks of it, we are playing Inferno Gate, but no Bolia Sapphire, so maybe he's being Hall of Famed or Premium Hall of Famed at this point. But yeah, that's deck out. We also see Jenny, the Dismantling Puppet, one of Andrew's favorites from DMP. Snorklaw, Shine Guardian, who we have next to Fal on the left side, is in this list. So Snorklaw actually came out all the way back in set 5, and it is an anti-mana burn strategy. So I guess all of the control players were getting fed up with the Soul Swap Zalberg shenanigans and all the Bejeweled Souls. Another cool card I want to shout out here is Spell Delphin, who we have 2 spots away from Fal. Spell Delphin was very strong in the early days of DMP. Basically stops your opponent from casting spells, and it's not on an evolution creature, so that's pretty nice for a control deck, isn't it? Moving down, we've got, alright, Fighter Messiah. I'm really sorry, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the cards in this deck. I assume it revolves around the card in the bottom right-hand corner. This looks like a spooky dude, but I just want to say, nice to see just dual civ, light nature doing well. Alright, moving on to 2007, we've got Landis, or Mana Burn. So this is a 4-civ Mana Burn strategy. We've got Reap and Sow, we've got Miraculous Plague. I think the TCG fans can see how annoying those cards are. Bajula's Soul, oh my goodness, these are really annoying cards to play against. But I think one card that makes this deck really click is Time Tripper, who we have in the bottom row next to Lost Soul. What he does is he makes all of your opponent's cards go into the mana zone tapped. So that's super annoying, it really slows them down a lot, and he comes out as early as turn 3. We've also got a reliable finisher in Spell Delphin here, so we can break and not be afraid. I see Bolmedius is in here too, and the 1 mana crisis is pretty funny. I think there is a combination of cards that makes this deck work here and not so much in the TCG, because in the TCG, the way to play Mana Burn seems to be based on IDC results. 4-civ, no fire. Here, I think 4-civ, low on light. I know we have Spell Delphin, but you know we still swap them in, so I don't think it really counts. I think Time Tripper really smooths out the mana curve and makes it so that Reap and Sow, or rather, you can get a lot of momentum from Reap and Sow, Mana Crisis, and then eventually Miraculous Plague. That's my interpretation anyway. Next list, we've got Removal Cardigan. Okay, that's I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but we've got Petrova Guardians and Aquan forming this strong core, and then it's more control good stuffs. Looks like the way the game is going, control decks are really liking Spell Delphin. Seems to be a very reliable finisher, which I guess makes sense because hitting 9 mana for a control deck isn't too hard. You're not trying to attack early, so yeah, you know, why not wait that long for a really nice finisher. Oh boy, what have we got here? We have got a very spicy deck. It is a Turbo Dragon deck. Now this card uses a lot of familiar faces from DMP. We've got Magma Dragon Balgar, who I think when he attacks, you look at the top card of your deck. If it's a dragon, you put it in the battle zone. Something to that effect, something to do with cheating dragons in. We've got Zach Peachy, or Moltres, who's like a T-Dad, and also lets us draw cards, potentially, if they're dragons. And then, of course, you got Romanesque in the bottom right-hand corner, who really kicks this deck into gear. When you put him in the battle zone, ramps the top 4 cards of your deck. You do burn mana each turn, but I think the amount of momentum you generate from him is just so insane. Right? Like, you get a lot of access to Bajula from the following turn, so I think that's really strong. So yeah, this is a really cool deck, and I think Romanesque is a card that eventually got Hall of Famed in the OCG. Necrogardna, so this is a 3-civ, light, dark, nature, civ combination that I am eternally fascinated with, but you know, in the TCG it doesn't quite work so well. Now, these decks were decks I was trying and failing to draw inspiration from as we were trying to build our Ozesu list for Season 3. This is pretty cool though, because you got Dark Hydra to really help you build card advantage. And then you got this dude in the bottom right hand corner, his name escapes me, but he deals with 2 of your opponent's creatures at once. So, you know, having dark cards that do that, I think that makes a big difference, and I feel that was sorely lacking in the TCG. Also, not too reliant on Alcadius, who's a little bit clunky. He got Spell Delphin as the finisher. But yeah, you know, this is just a pretty interesting list, and I was looking at a lot of these as we were trying to build Ozesu. Another list we've got Mono Blue Pacific. I'm a little bit surprised that we're seeing Mono Blue Pacific this late. I know it wasn't that good when DM13 came out. I think at around DM like 14 or 15 it started gaining some traction. But anyway, this is a, you know, mono water rush deck through the combination of Spin Slicer and Pacific Champion, who could come out as early as turn 2. I think that's like super devastating. And then you had really nice draw cards like Streaming Shaper and Cyberbrain. And then I think you also got some other merfolks who can eventually help draw cards too. yeah, I really like this list, even though I imagine I would not really enjoy playing against it. Last Patrol, I'm really sorry, I'm not really able to comment much on this. The card Last Patrol, I think it works like you get shields. I can't quite remember, I'm sorry. But I assume it's built around Last Patrol and the card in the bottom right-hand corner. But before we close, I do want to shout out some interesting cards. So there is a card here next to Soul Swap and next to Bronze Arm. It's another Soul Swap-esque card. I think that's basically what you need to know. And then the card in the top right-hand corner is Cyberlord, whereby when you put him in the battle zone, you look at your opponent's hand, and then you put one of those cards into the shields. So if you're looking to eliminate threats from the game entirely, well, this card is a pretty good means of doing that, and it's just super annoying in general. It's also a way to interact with your opponent's hand without the Darkness Sieve, so I think that's really interesting. Sorry I couldn't contribute more analysis for this deck. But yeah, so that brings me to the end of this video. By the looks of it, we've got one more video left. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say, and I'll see you guys in the next one.